Hi, I'm Laura Andre and welcome to Fix It. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of automotive repair, which is something I don't do a whole lot of. But I'm working with a 2003 Volkswagen Passat wagon, 1.8 liter turbo GLS model, and the problem is that the CV axle has gone kaput. You know your CV axle is messed up when you turn a corner and it makes a loud clicking or grinding sound. And this car is definitely doing that. So I did some research online and found out it's not that difficult if you have the right tools and if you know how to do it safely. So let's begin. I'm going to start by showing you some of the tools that you're going to need to complete this job and take you through it step by step. So the particular wheel in question is the right front passenger side tire, where the CV joint is being compromised by a torn boot, and I'll show you that when we get the wheel off. But first thing we need to do is look at some of the tools we'll need. First, you've got a breaker bar, which helps you break the hold that a nut or bolt has. I need some extensions for that breaker bar. I've got a 20-inch and I think a 10-inch. I've got a mirror, a torque wrench, which we'll need to tighten up the bolts when we're done. I have a 17mm hex driver, which will fit into the bolt you see on the right. That's a new axle bolt that I purchased for this job. The axle bolt is torqued under quite a bit of stress and needs to be replaced. In the center, then, I have a 10mm triple square, which will be used to remove 6 bolts that attach the inner CV axle to the transmission. Got a handy screwdriver and a pair of needle nose pliers and floor jack, and of course the new CV axle, which I bought for about $100. Okay, so the first thing we'll need to do is to jack up the wheel, and before we do that we need to loosen the bolts. Now the Volkswagen comes with some plastic wheel bolt covers that need to be removed, and I'll do that with the needle nose pliers. Basically we just go in there and pull those off. Volkswagen makes a handy dandy tool for this, but I lost it. Get those out of the way. And then another thing we're going to do is remove the emblem here so that we can loosen the wheel nut. Before we lift the wheel off the ground. So okay, so I've got the wheel bolts loosened and the axle bolt loosened. That's in the center of the wheel. I raised the car on a jack, and I put a jack stand at the jack point along the seam at the edge of the car. You never want to rest the car on the jack itself, because if it fails, you're in big trouble. I'm using an oversized jack stand. This is a 3-ton jack stand designed for SUVs, and this car weighs only about 1.5 tons. So I feel pretty safe that this jack stand is going to hold the car. I also have one of the back wheels on chocks so that they don't accidentally roll. Emergency brake is on. So what I'm going to do next is continue to loosen these tire nuts so I can get the wheel off. And our last tire bolt is the locking nut, for which you need this special tool which fits in there. Usually kept with the jack for the car. Okay, so now we're going to remove the wheel, get it out of the way. And we can see a lot better with what we're dealing here. Okay, so we have the wheel off, we have the axle bolt loose, and our next step is going to be to remove these 6 bolts that hold the CV axle to the transmission. Now there's a heat shield in the way. You can see it by it's that silver arc near the top middle of the picture. And I'm going to see if I can do this without removing the heat shield, but we'll see. So I'm going to take my 12-point triple square, which I don't know if you can see this, which has a 1/2 inch hexagonal end to it, and the 12-point triple square will fit into my driver, which is attached to the breaker bar. Try not to hit your car with the breaker bar as you rotate the bolts out. Success! So here we are with the old CV axle, and you can see where the boot was broken and all that grease is compromised with dirt and crud. So no wonder it didn't ride smoothly. Okay, so now we got to put the new one in. Okay, so after much sweat and labor, I managed to wrangle the new axle in. And I've got it lined up to the holes in the transmission. And it's inserted properly into the axle bolt location. So now we just need to put the bolts back in and put it all back together. So we're just hand tightening these bolts that go into the transmission at this point. They'll need to be torqued, and you'll need to look up the specifications for your vehicle. Obviously we don't want to strip these bolts, so we're putting them in very carefully at this point. So once you've bolted the CV axle to the transmission, then you'll want to take the new axle bolt and hand tighten it, put the wheel on, hand tighten those bolts, and then lower the car. You'll want to torque those bolts, the axle bolts as well as the wheel bolts, to the correct specifications while the car is on the ground. That way it's safer. Put the hub emblem back on and you're good to go. To watch more how-to videos, go to fixet.net. Be safe, and remember, you can do it.